Get ready to embrace debate. First Take starts now.
Coming up on the First Take podcast, should LeBron stay in Miami or take his talents to another team? Plus, how impressive was Team USA's World Cup win? And Kobe Bryant or Tim Duncan? Which NBA star has had the better career? All that and more coming up on the First Take podcast, which starts right now. Good morning, everyone. We're back in studio, sort of. The Big Three. It is Carrie Champion, Skip Bayless, and Stephen A. Smith joins us from New York. Good morning, Stephen A. How are you?
Que pasa?
Oh.
Que pasa? What's going on, y'all?
You're still speaking San Antonian?
Yes, San Antonio.
Hey, they deserve it. They deserve it.
Hey, it is really weird in here right now
It's
because
so
it
bizarre.
is deadly quiet.
I know.
Stephen A., I'm in trouble today. I don't have my people behind me.
You don't have Skip.
You are. And it is weird for you, Skip, because I am accustomed to being around the people.
Oh,
you are a man of the people.
He is a true politician. You guys, let's just take a moment to say that we were very happy to visit both San Antonio and Miami. We had a wonderful time.
You.
We're grateful for the opportunity to meet our viewers, our fans. Thank you guys for choosing us. We appreciate you. We had a good time, did we not,
Carrie,
Stephen A?
Yes, we did. But, Kerry, I must admit to you that at some point in time today, we're going to have to talk about the outfit, the colors. I'm a little thrown off. I'm a little thrown off.
Oh.
You know, I just need
This is
something.
the first on this show.
Thrown off.
Wait, Stephen
sorry.
A. takes a shot at Carrie's wardrobe?
My wardrobe.
We are off to the races.
Saying. It just threw me off, Carrie. It just threw me off.
Stephen A., it's something new. It's fashionable.
Carrie, for the record,
It's nice.
I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
it
you,
is,
Skip.
Carrie. Yes, it
You
is.
know what,
I'm just
Stephen
messing
A.?
with you. I'm just messing with you. I'm just messing with you.
All right, gentlemen, let's begin. Our Brian Windhorst was on this show yesterday, and he said that LeBron James has to make a decision about free agency on or before June 29th. Windhorst added that he is probably one of the most powerful free agents this time around because money not really an issue or a priority for him because of his off-the-court endorsement deals, adding there isn't a team that would not fight to have him. And as the deadline approaches, there are reports that the Heat will try to add Carmelo Anthony to keep LeBron. And now Yahoo Sports reports that LeBron and his wife love Los Angeles. They didn't say he was going there, but they love L.A. Who would not, right, Mr. Bayless? Stephen A. Smith, the question is for you. What should LeBron do?
Well, in my opinion, he should stay in Miami, but that's assuming that Pat Riley and the Miami Heat do what they're supposed to do, which I have every confidence they will do. Pat Riley, for the most part, has lived up to his promises and has delivered on his promises to LeBron James. When LeBron James was in Cleveland, contemplating leaving the Cavaliers to depart and take his talents to South Beach, it was Pat Riley that sat in front of him and laid down the rings and said, this is what it's all about. Here it is, what you want to do. And as a result of that, LeBron James has the first 2 championships in his NBA career and went to 4 consecutive NBA championships, not to mention captured 2 league MVP honors. And so when you look at it, there's no question that it was a successful run in South Beach. More importantly, Miami is an incredible recruiting tool. I think that people keep dismissing that. Yeah, they've got to do the job, and we understand they've got to clear the necessary cap space, whether it's Chris Bosh leaving, Dwayne Wade taking a pay cut, et cetera, LeBron James taking a pay cut. But I also think it's important to recognize that if you've got serviceable or viable pieces in place, Skip, it's real easy to convince somebody to go to South Beach. Okay? Los Angeles is attractive, but regardless of what the report says, and Mark Spears wrote it, so we're not going to refute him. That's my man. It's one of my best friends in this industry. I love him dearly. He knows what the hell he's talking about and actually deserves more shine than he gets, to be quite honest with you. But I will tell you that on this particular issue, even though LeBron James doesn't mind L.A., he's never been enamored with that Hollywood scene. Sure, he would love to play with Chris Paul and for Doc Rivers, more so even than he would want to play alongside Kobe Bryant, having to carry that Laker torch and be one of the latest. He is a bit reticent about being seen as a mercenary, just going place to place, you know, to the highest bidder per se and whatever. So he has some sensitivities there. but there's also those California taxes, okay? Let's keep that in mind. Now, that may not matter to people, but to people who make money, you know what? I'm not the only dude out there saying I'm a proud capitalist, and I'm broke compared to these brothers. So let's keep in mind that the state of Florida, there is no state income tax. It is a first-class organization. It is one that is being run by Pat Riley instead of Jim Buss. And all of those things factor into the equation. So I would have to say Miami would obviously be ideal, but that doesn't mean that they don't have to do what they don't have to do. LeBron is going to meet with his dude, Rich Paul. Rich Paul is the agent of record. He represents LeBron. Of course, LeBron is going to talk to his wife, his lovely wife, Savannah. Definitely she's going to have some input along with his kids. But in the end, it's going to be about him and Rich Paul, along with LRMR, mingling together, getting together, and making the decision. Primarily Rich and LeBron making the decision about what's going to be in his best interest. And it's going to be contingent on the roster that LeBron James has to work with. Because if the roster ain't good enough, he ain't staying.
Okay, so for the record, before I answer the question, you have consistently said on this show, LeBron James is not a Hollywood kind of guy. Mm-hmm. So you are pretty much dismissing any even potential interest he might have in Clippers where they can't fit him under the cap, or Lakers where, as you say, he and Kobe probably wouldn't be a great fit at this point in Kobe's career. Am I right about that?
I would say to you, I'm dismissing the Lakers more than I'm dismissing the Clippers, because even though he's not the quote-unquote Hollywood kind of guy, the opportunity to play with a Chris Paul and for a Doc Rivers is incredibly appealing. But I would dismiss L.A. more so than Miami.
I'm not a capologist, but it just seems impossible to fit LeBron James under the current Clippers salary cap. So that seems to be eliminated. Go ahead.
No, it would have to be a trade, Skip. In other words, it would have to be like LeBron would have to say, I want to go to the Clippers, and then the Clippers would probably unload Blake Griffin or somebody like that. That's what would happen.
Then would LeBron be happy with that scenario? I don't know. Okay, back to the question. In the big picture, in the end, even though for the next 2 weeks we will get bombarded with what will LeBron do, he should, as you pointed out to start your answer, he should obviously stay in Miami. I think it's silly to even debate the possibility of going to Cleveland or going to New York or going to wherever else you want to talk about. Stephen A., we have lost all perspective on this. I just go back 1 week, just from Sunday night to the previous Sunday night. I watched Manu Ginobili sit at the podium after the Spurs had lost at home Game 2. Remember his quote? He said, "We have to play perfect basketball to beat this team because they are so much more athletic than we are."
That's true.
Okay, so we went from that moment to this moment, from Sunday to Sunday, when the Heat fell completely apart, and all of a sudden it's time to dismantle the Miami Heat. I'm going to remind you, as bad as Dwayne Wade in the last couple of games, 3 games, he's only 32 years of age. As bad as Chris Bosh looked in the last 3 games when he went 1 for 7 from 3 and wasn't that threat to bring Tim Duncan out of the lane that I thought he would be, he's only 30 years of age. So all of a sudden I say, really, what's wrong with the Heat? And I watched, as you did, our Chris Broussard and Brian Windhorst speculate about, well, Pat Riley could do this and this and this. He could bring in, and again, they were just throwing out names, a Luol Deng, a Chandler Parsons, maybe long shot Kyle Lowry, as Chris Broussard said. But I'm not going to bet against a Pat Riley. Stephen A., I'm not going to bet against a Dwayne Wade with an offseason to get better. Even though he may have, as Brian told us on the show yesterday, arthritic knees that'll never really get good, I think he'll get better. I think by far the best place for LeBron, so that he doesn't have that mercenary label of constantly looking for the more help, next superstar. Can I go here? Can I go there? Somebody help me. Somebody better. Come and help me. Come and save me. If he doesn't want that reputation, he should stay in Miami and do what we just saw the San Antonio Spurs do last offseason. Revenge. Get back to the finals. Now they have some new motivation they have not had after having gone to 4 straight finals. As Bosh said after the game on Sunday night, You know, it was a grind all year. There was nothing happy about anything. We'd win and we wouldn't be happy.
Right.
Okay, now you start fresh. Now you start from zero again, and you say, can we build this thing back up to where it should be, where it was 2 and 3 years ago? And I think that's his best chance. I don't want to hear about this or that. I know they all love to be loved and they love to be sought and all that, but come on, stop it.
But let's be clear about something here. It's not about what you nor I nor anybody else wants to hear. We have to understand that what usurps that is LeBron's right to do what he wants to do without a heavy level of scrutiny, because it's not like he's going someplace where he's going to be second fiddle. He's the man that has his choosing. He may be the greatest free agent ever, and everything is in play. And if we think about this, Skip, it's almost like you and I. Let's make it relative to our industry to some degree. It's like you and I being on television. If we're just contributors or whatever the case may be, we try to fit in where we can get in. But First Take is first. We're the bomb right now. We're flowing. The show is incredibly successful. We have our pick of the litter.
You're welcome.
Excuse me. Well, it's just the truth. It's just the truth. Major props to you, bro, who's been holding it down for about 9 or 10 years. Take your compliments, okay? That's right. Yes, you have. My point to you is my point to you is this: when you look at it, Skip, that's like saying, well, you know what? We don't have we shouldn't want to entertain having our pick of the litter. Yes, we are proud to be at ESPN. Yes, we love working here. But at the same time, if every network under the sun came knocking on our door, you don't think we'd sit on top going like this? Life is pretty nice up here. Yes, we would. Okay? So the point that I'm trying to make to you is that we can't fault a guy that's not even 30 yet in LeBron James having his pick of the litter and being in a position to choose where he wants to go and who he wants to play for because he's earned it. Now, if he hadn't won a title and he hadn't won league MVP honors and there was a resume rife with underachievement and disappointment and nothing else, then you would have a point. But when you are a 4-time league MVP, when you've been to the NBA Finals 5 times, when you have 2 rings, okay, and you've just finished going to the finals for a 4th consecutive time as the leader, you were driving. You weren't riding, you were driving. Well, then you kind of earned the right to have your pick of the litter without people saying, oh, you know what, that's weak, that's the cowardly way out, or whatever the case may be. I can't go at LeBron like that because he's done it. And I got to give him that respect. I hear what you're saying because he's got to be careful about the mercenary tag. Sure. But at the same time, he's earned it. He's earned it. And if he makes, I don't think he'll do it because I think it's Miami. I think it's Miami. But I'd have no problem with him going back to Cleveland because I think that would be a fantastic story going home. But if he decided, if worst case scenario, Skip, if he stood up and said, you know what, I want to be a mercenary. I want to be the hit man. I don't knock him for that. He can do what he wants.
Okay. So would you encourage him to go back to Cleveland then?
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No. I would encourage somebody to leave South Beach. What blasphemy coming out of your mouth?
The key to the city. You got more than LeBron.
It ain't happening. Of course he should go back to South Beach. Okay? I don't want to be in Cleveland in June. Sorry, Cleveland. Love you dearly. Great sports town. Hope the Browns do well too. But I'm not interested in going to Cleveland in June. Mm-hmm. I want to be in South Beach or New York. One of the two.
Okay, question.
LA are just in third.
This is interesting. You brought this up. Higher degree of difficulty right now to win next year in Cleveland or win next year in Miami? I'm talking about win a championship.
Skip, believe it or not, I would say Miami based on right now in terms of their health. If they're healthy, please. There's nothing to talk about. Cleveland's not even in their same class. But with young thoroughbreds, a Kyrie Irving, some size on your front line, and let's say they were smart enough to go and get Mark Jackson as their coach.
Okay.
Well, you know something? That would be kind of different for me. It would. But of course, I'm only saying that because Miami's health is questionable right now. And I think Dwayne Wade, to me is a superstar when healthy. I don't care what anybody wants to say. That man didn't lose his game. He's just hurt. Okay. And he got to get treated. He's got to get healthy.
So when you say health, it's only Dwayne Wade's health that you have questions about, not anybody else's health, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
I'll go on record right now. I would applaud LeBron for going back to Cleveland right now because I think it would be a much higher degree of difficulty. I would appreciate the guts it would take to go back home, quote unquote, to his home area and try to lift that young team to a championship. Go do that, LeBron. I would be impressed.
So I got to tell you something, though, man. I can't rule out anything with LeBron because he, as an athlete, I've never seen anyone more about business than he is. Because he is a businessman. I mean, everybody's talking about this Beats by Dre thing. You know, they sold for $3.2 billion. Talking about LeBron got like a $30 million. They don't know what they're talking about. Skip, it's a whole lot more than that, brother. I'm here to tell you something right now. LeBron ain't starving for any dollars. That man is a businessman and very adroit at it, I might add. But what I will say is this. I just look at it right now, man, and I got to tell you, I read that letter yesterday on my radio show. Yeah. What Dan Gilbert wrote to him.
I know. It was strong.
In the aftermath of him leaving. And Dan Le Batard came on my radio show to talk about it as well. It's hard to imagine that you could shrug that off. I mean, it was really bad.
Yeah.
All right. And speaking of LeBron, the man who made his life tough during the series is being analyzed by other greats. Kevin Durant to speak. He's weighing in on Kawhi Leonard on his skill set, and he took it to Twitter. Despite winning MVP of the finals, KD says he's a product of the system. Let's take a look. Someone tweets him and basically says to him, I'm taking Leonard over Paul George all day and think Larry Bird traded him for George Hill. Kevin Durant responds, you tripping? Well, okay. To the other guy, he says, Trey 5, you don't think he can do work in Indiana? KD responds, no, he's doing work like this because of the system. Put Paul George on the Spurs. What would happen? Kevin Durant later deleted those tweets, so they're no longer there, but we were able to screen caption it as you saw. Stephen A., you agree with Kevin Durant?
Believe it or not, it doesn't matter. To some degree, I agree with him because Paul George could do damage on the Spurs. I have no doubt about that. He plays both ends of the floor, and despite his struggles, I think Paul George has incredible promise. And although I was incredibly disappointed in the Indiana Pacers this postseason, I'm still fans of all of those guys. I think they're great for the NBA, and I hope they resurrect themselves. But the reason why it doesn't matter is because as much as I hate to say this because he's one of my favorite people in the league and I root for him, I'm disappointed in Kevin Durant. That wasn't necessary. Kawhi Leonard just won a championship. You didn't. You understand? And the Spurs beat you to get there. Show some respect. Show some professional courtesy. Kawhi Leonard is a good young player. He's no Kevin Durant. Please don't get me wrong. But he's a damn good young player. Works hard, shuts his mouth, doesn't say anything about anybody. Why you got to say something about him? Especially when they just took you out in 6 games. Yep. You know, and by the way, if Kawhi Leonard is a product of the system, then Kevin Durant, why haven't you won a championship yet? Could it be because your system ain't working for you? I mean, that's a legitimate question. And I'm not saying this to knock Scott Brooks. Some people, he's on the hot seat. To me, he's done a good job. There have been times when I've had questions about Scott Brooks, but overall, there is no question that he has done a good job. He deserves the benefit of the doubt, and I personally like him, and I wish him nothing but the best. But at the same time, if you want to elevate Kawhi's stature and attribute it solely to the system, then Kevin Durant, how come you've only been to 1 NBA Finals? How come you haven't won a championship? Could it be because of the system that you're playing under? How are you going to sit there and praise one system to denigrate a player, but at the same time ignore your system, which has failed to elevate you to championship stature? Now, I say that with respect because, Skip, you know how I feel about Kevin Durant. I think he's the second best player in the NBA. I think he's a superstar personified. I think if it wasn't for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's extreme, exorbitant numbers, he'd be the all-time leading scorer. He's an incredible ambassador for the game of basketball. I am a fan of Kevin Durant's. But on this particular issue, I thought what he said was wrong, and it was unnecessary, and it was Bush League, and it was weak. And he shouldn't do that because he's better than that. As he said, what is this guy? This is the guy that talked about, getting along, being happy, being nice. Remember he talked about that, Skip?
Do I?
What he did, what was it? What was the campaign? I don't remember what the campaign was.
Well, there was the Not Nice campaign to start a year ago, and then this year it's that nice guys can finish first.
Yes.
That whole idea.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, do you know anybody that attributes to? To me, it would seem like Kawhi Leonard is a nice guy that finished first.
He did.
It would fall right in line with what Kevin Durant is supposed to be preaching.
Yeah. This is why Kevin Durant still fights that identity crisis of who am I? How should I be? Should I be the tough guy with edge? Should I be the not nice Kevin, or should I be the really nice Kevin? Should I almost lead the NBA in technical fouls, or should I not? I agree with every word you just uttered, and I thank you for every word you just uttered. You nailed it. This was, for me, something that I had your reaction initially, then I sat back and thought about it. I'm going to try to give Kevin a little break here because I think he's still raw for having lost a Game 6 at home to the Spurs without Tony Parker in the second half. This was classic don't hit send, to quote our great friend Herm, Coach Herm. Mm-hmm. And that's why those tweets got deleted, because he hit send with the emotion of the moment, because he's still bitter, he's a little raw, it was beneath him, he knew it, so he deleted the tweets. I agree with your premise, though. The irony of those responses is that I have sat here in this chair again and again and again and said the problem with the Oklahoma City Thunder is there is no real system. It's your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn. Russell Westbrook dribbles the ball up the floor, and sometimes he just goes ahead and shoots it, or he lobs it out on the wing and says, hey, let's clear out for Kevin this time. Or Ibaka, go pick for Kevin this time, see what he can do. It's not great. It's not great strategy long term. It's not getting them where they want to be, and I think he's a little jealous of the system that the Spurs have. Now, let's look at Kawhi versus Paul George. I think Kawhi would be better, or is better, in the San Antonio system than Paul George would be. I'll give you this. Paul George may be a slightly better, pure on-ball defender right now than Kawhi is, but Stephen A., we just saw during the finals, is there a better help defender in basketball than Kawhi Leonard? He was taking LeBron, and if LeBron kicked it to Bosh on the wing, I'd look up and Kawhi Leonard was on the dead run trying to block Bosh's shot. So his basketball IQ within this defensive system is off the charts. And the other thing that people don't get about Kawhi Leonard that I'm going to show you here about Paul George and especially about Kevin Durant, Paul George and Kevin Durant turn the ball over at a high rate. Over the last 2 years alone, Kevin Durant's had 565 turnovers. Last 2 years combined, Kawhi Leonard has 142. 565 to 142. You know what the Spurs coaches love the most about Kawhi other than his defense? He doesn't turn the ball over. So there's a lot to learn here for Kevin Durant. You got to clean up your act. You've wasted too many possessions, too many empty trips because you just turned the ball over. You threw a bad, sloppy pass. Kawhi doesn't do that. You have to sit back and learn from how did the Spurs beat you in 6 games? This is why. So now it just comes across as just pure sour grapes instead of paying homage to a champ and saying, how can I learn from this?
Yeah, you're right. And I think the thing about it is that Kevin Durant needs to understand something else as well. He's on the clock, not just as somebody who's devoid of a championship right now. Even though he's only 25, still young in his career, the talent that he has and that he brings to the table in combination with Russell Westbrook. The reason why I say he's on the clock, Skip, is not because of a lack of a championship, but because there are obvious things that need to take place that if a more assertive Kevin Durant was present would have already occurred. Like, for example, somehow, some way, there may not be questions about Scott Brooks if Kevin Durant was a bit more assertive. There may not be headaches that a superstar talent, as mercurial as he may be in Russell Westbrook, poses. Because if you're the man, you reel that stuff in. You see what I'm saying? But because he hasn't done that, there's questions about the head coach. There's questions about the point guard. When, in fact, now it's getting to a point where there are going to be questions about the reigning league MVP.
That is correct. Last quick point. You realize, Stephen A., the Spurs don't run a lot of plays for Kawhi Leonard. It's always the point guards. It's Parker and Ginobili picking and rolling. So they have to beg him, encourage him. If the ball comes to you and you feel like you got a shot, put the ball up. Go ahead and take the shot. So here's Kevin Durant, high-volume shooter, criticizing a guy that they don't even run plays for.
Yeah. I like what Pop said about Kawhi Leonard. Stop deferring. Remember? He's like, just stop it. Get in there.
Well, that's what finally happened in the series. He stopped and started.
And became the MVP.
Yeah. A U.S. corner. Simpson to take it. There's a USA! What about that? It's John Brooks! It's John Brooks for the USA! Incredible!
The United States defeated Ghana 2-1 at the 2014 FIFA World Cup. John Brooks scored the game-winning goal in the 86th minute, becoming the first substitute ever to score a goal for the United States in the World Cup. The other USA goal was scored by Clint Dempsey with 29 seconds into the game, the fastest goal scored by the United States and the fifth fastest goal scored by anyone in World Cup history. Let's talk about the match, shall we? Bayless.
Yes.
We took a break from basketball. How exciting was this match?
Stephen A. Smith, I found this match shockingly exciting, but before I proceed, allow me to qualify or disqualify myself because I've never been a big soccer fan. I have always been a huge World Cup fan. I've covered the World Cup back in my newspaper days. I've covered matches on foreign soil. I know how into the world these matches feel in other countries. But I must say, big picture, I'll watch any World Cup game because I understand the gravity. But when it comes to let's say our Olympic basketball, I know that all the other countries are trying to beat us at our game. In this case, to me, we're trying to beat them at their game. So we are, to me, always a decided underdog. So it's easier to root for us. It's hard for me sometimes to root for Team USA in Olympic basketball because I feel like we should win it. It's the game we own. But in this case, yesterday, 29 seconds in, Clint Dempsey's goal was Messi-esque. Heck, speaking of Brazil, it was Pelé-esque. Was that not sweet? Was that not clever and creative and spectacular? And then we spent most of the rest of the game hanging on for dear life against a superior Ghana, our nemesis the last two times, on the attack for the rest of the game. And we survived on good old American grit and guts. You know, it's that underdog mentality of just hang on for dear life. And finally, we win when a backup, German-born, heads home a goal for a coach from Germany. Wow, that's only in the World Cup. And that guy, John Brooks, that you just spoke of, then told Jeremy Schaap afterward that he had a dream he was going to score that goal. What did he say, in the 86th minute as opposed to the 88th minute? But still, the dream, well, that was a dream game, dream scenario, I thought, for Team USA. So I was riveted and wildly excited.
Well, listen, Brooks rose up with the header, knocked it in. It was beautiful. It was beautiful to see his teammates jump on him. It was beautiful to see him unable to get up because he was so emotional after scoring a big-time goal. You running up and down that field the way they do in soccer, my man, you score a goal, it's heaven. You know what I mean? It really, really is. And Dempsey, you got to remember, Dempsey's my man from my Alberto beef jerky commercials.
Oh,
you got to remember, we did that commercial together.
You guys go way back.
Oh, no, you're qualified. That makes you a soccer expert.
I'm very, very happy for what Dempsey did, but I got to tell you, Skip, I don't get an opportunity to watch soccer much, obviously, in the USA, but I got to tell you, I was riveted, especially, I didn't see much of this game because I was traveling, but I got to tell you, Skip, I watched the whole game the other day of the Netherlands beat down Spain. I mean, it was something special to behold. I'm telling you, I
at the
love
finals.
every moment of it.
What were you doing?
The Netherlands. I was in the Yard House. I was at the Yard House at the Merrick Park Mall in Coral Gables watching the game. I mean, I had a ball doing it. And I got to tell you something, man. I got to tell you something. The Netherlands are a team to be reckoned with. Germany is no joke. You saw what they did to my man Ronaldo in Portugal. Yes, they beat him down. You got to pay attention to all of that. But USA, like you said, grit, guts, and whatever. And if I may share a personal story with you and Kerry, if you don't mind, about this. Let me tell you something that it touches my heart when it comes to soccer. Skip, I got a story to tell you that I never told you before. Years ago, I'm a student at Winston-Salem State University, my alma mater, and I want to become a sports writer, and I'm a clerk for the Winston-Salem Journal local newspaper. The sports editor, Terry Oberle, sends me out there. This is in 1991. He sends me out there, Skip, actually 92, I'm sorry. He sends me out there to do a feature on Wake Forest soccer because I'm trying to become a sports writer. And I wanted to, build my portfolio and develop published clips. I go out there. There's a gentleman by the name of Walt Chisowich. He is now deceased. He was the head soccer coach for Wake Forest University. An absolutely wonderful man. Just touches my heart even thinking about him. I walked up to him and said to him, I don't know anything about soccer. The only match I've ever watched was Pele in 1980, the Olympics. I know nothing about soccer, but I'm an aspiring sports writer, and they asked me to do this assignment. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Could you help me? Do you know what this man did, Skip?
Oh.
He said, come back tomorrow. I came back the next day. The man called his entire team over to the huddle and said, you are to give this man complete, unadulterated access for the next 3 days, because I had 4 days to get the story in. And for 3 whole days, it was either the players or Walt Chisowich himself who taught me the game of soccer that allowed me to write a 2-page end zone piece for the Winston-Salem Journal. And it was so good that I came in the next day, and Terry Oberle, the sports writer, said, congratulations, you are the new beat writer for Wake Forest Soccer, the number 3 team in the nation. And that is the reason I became a sports writer, because of the soccer team at Wake Forest, along with Coach Walt Chisowich. To him and his family, love y'all dearly. Thank you for everything.
Okay, not to top you on that, but can I tell a quick story also?
You were there when something started.
1982, before your time. I'm a young gun columnist at the Dallas Times-Herald, assigned to go to Wimbledon and the British Open. There's an off week in between those 2 events in which the World Cup is being played. I'm in England. I am, you and I have never discussed this, I'm a Shakespeare fanatic. I had a chance to go to Stratford-upon-Avon, Shakespeare's home, and actually see a play, All's Well That Ends Well. I had tickets for months for this play. The young lady I was with at the time, got to bring that up, Ernestine, I'm sorry.
Hey, you don't.
We go to the play. We make it maybe 20 minutes into the play, and I looked at her and I said, I'm sorry, I have to go back to the hotel. I can't stand it. I've got to watch Germany and Italy in the World Cup final. It just got in my blood, man. I just couldn't take it. So I took so many Shakespeare courses at Vanderbilt, and I walked out on All's Well That Ends Well to go watch Germany play Italy. That's how much the World Cup grabs me every 4 years.
So you know the moral of that story.
Look at it this way.
Women
That's probably why you ain't with that girl.
Oh, well, no.
And you found Ernestine years later.
Well, that's what I said. The moral of the story is that he always makes his ladies take a back seat, so to speak.
I left her, and that was pretty much the end of us, actually.
Oh, well, good for Ernestine. Her loss, her gain.
Yeah, see, Ernestine would have gone back with me to the hotel.
The best player of this generation arguably boils down to Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan. At least that's what the stats show. Duncan led the Spurs to their first title and a total of 5 over the last 16 years. 3 finals MVPs and 2 regular season MVPs, while Kobe also has 5 titles, 2 finals, 1 regular. But their individual accomplishments, as you can see, are almost identical. That's why we ask this question. Who do you believe has had the better career? Something we should let simmer. Who's had the better career? It's a tough one, Stephen A., so we give it to you.
You know something? Sports is a results-oriented business. So if you're simply going by the results, I understand there are those who would say Tim Duncan. Don't blame him, can't refute it. Tim Duncan came into the league the same time as Kobe Bryant. What people need to understand is that Tim Duncan has never won less than 50 games in any season except the lockout shortened season when there were only 50 games in a season. And that year he won 37. This is just nothing short of phenomenal. Since this man has arrived on the scene for the San Antonio Spurs, they have consistently, for more than 15 years, been a contender. On that premise, the nod goes to Tim Duncan. But here's where my boy Champ in Detroit, my man, the radio host that the sports writer Mayberry in Oklahoma City introduced me to when they were raving about Kobe, here's where they have a point. Kobe has just as many rings as Tim Duncan, even though 3 of them were with Shaq. But the change, not having Phil, having to be a part of a rebuilding process, having Jim Buss as your owner, changing systems, having to deal with Rudy Tomjanovich one day and Mike D'Antoni the next and Mike Brown and having to play point guard, small forward, as well as shooting guard, having to score, having to defend in the backcourt against some of the best players. And somehow, some way, you still end up with just as many rings as Tim Duncan, having to go through the soap opera that he had to go through with Shaq and all of those boys. I mean, the list went on and on. Kobe had adversity he overcame. So if you look at it from that standpoint, I got to give the nod to Kobe. But if you want to sit there and say, well, consistency, record, then of course it goes to Duncan, but one would argue, well, damn, Greg Popovich been there since the day Tim Duncan arrived. Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker weren't far behind. The Spurs are a first-class organization. They've been an incredible model of consistency, and there has been nothing that they have encountered that rocked the boat from an organizational standpoint. It is as close to tranquility as you can get in professional sports as far as I'm concerned. And to me, that's something that Tim Duncan has enjoyed that Kobe has never enjoyed. So in the end, I'm going to have to take that in consideration, and I'm going to have to give the nod to Kobe.
Just because Champ talked you out of it?
Well, that's part of it. I mean, Champ knows his basketball. That's my boy. He knows his basketball. He ain't the only one.
We know he ain't the only one,
but I mean, it's going back and forth. It's going back and forth.
Apologies to Champ, and apologies to Carrie, and apologies to many, many of our younger viewers who are going to say what I'm about to say is blasphemous.
And the radio host in Oklahoma City,
sorry,
not
the radio
forgetting
host.
Don't forget him, because he was arguing for about a half hour.
Yeah, and my grandmother.
She's
going to be upset.
Darnell Mayberry's boy.
Yes.
Okay.
He made good points.
All those apologies.
Points.
I apologize to all of them. Tim Duncan has had a little better career than Kobe Bryant has. And the reason for that tranquility in San Antonio, the reason there has been no boat rocking in San Antonio, is the rock that has been Tim Duncan. There has been no change because Tim Duncan never changes. And I'm going to boil it down for you, and you mentioned this. Kobe won 3 of his rings alongside Shaquille O'Neal. Now, it's highly debatable who was more valuable, especially in their 3rd championship season. But I'm going to say that Shaq was a little more valuable as a driving force than Shaq was. Just a little more valuable. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay. Yeah. Tim Duncan has been the driving force and the leader of all 5 Spurs championship teams. And if Tim Duncan had won MVP of this year's finals, I would have had no problem with it. I was fine. I was happy for Kawhi. But I made the point to you on yesterday's show. Man, I thought Tim Duncan at least should have shared part of that MVP. His rim protection against LeBron was extraordinary in this season. I can't show you block shots, but I can show you a bunch of altered shots. That has been the case for year after year after year. They all follow Tim's lead. Now, even as the Spurs supporter on this show, I'll be the first to admit to you, if I have to pay money to watch Kobe or pay money to watch Tim, I'm paying money to watch Kobe Bean Bryant. I got to tell you, if I have a choice on TV, even though I love watching my Spurs, if Kobe's, I don't know, I'm going to watch Kobe. Who doesn't want to watch Kobe? He is, to quote you, box office. He might be the greatest box office, well, he's the greatest since Michael, obviously Michael Jordan. But in the end, Stephen A., I look at what Tim does, and it doesn't translate. I've called him often on this show the most boring superstar in the history of sports. He has no edge to him. He doesn't pick fights. He doesn't feud with rival players. He barely says anything. For him to say, what was it, this time we're going to do it to start this series, that was shocking. That was like, what? Tim Duncan said they're going to do it? Go ahead.
But Skip, but all I'm trying to say to you is this. I'm not refuting your position if all we're talking about are results. But if you want to do it like that, nobody can compete with that. Tim Duncan hasn't won less than 50 games, just like I said. The issue is that I'm taking into account the adversity and the roller coaster ride created by the players, created by the organization, created by ownership, going back and forth. I'm taking all of those things into consideration. The rise, the fall. I remember when the Lakers were going for their first title and Shaq fouled out. I remember how Kobe had to come to the rescue, okay, in his first NBA Finals when he put on that show in game 5. I think it was game 5 or game 4, whatever game it was, against Indiana. I'm thinking about game 7 of Sacramento, the year that they ended up beating the Nets when they went to a 7-game series and Kobe was there. There were moments. Don't get me wrong. Shaq is the most dominant force of the modern day era. He's the diesel. You know how I feel about Shaq. But you needed Kobe in the fourth quarter because Shaq struggled with free throws. And it was Kobe who was handed the ball. And it was Kobe who was asked to deliver. It was Kobe who had to play point sometimes. It was Kobe who had to go out there and defend against the best player. And then after Shaq was gone, they had to plummet. And then all of a sudden you're building it back up. And in the meantime, he's doing everything that he's doing. I'm like, wait a minute. If you're just talking about record, of course it's Tim Duncan. But if you're talking about having to overcome adversity and still end up with what Tim Duncan has, I don't think you can summarily dismiss what Kobe has achieved.
I'm having to debate two people at once. I'm getting it from this direction and this direction.
Because Stephen A., you're right. He didn't have pop. He didn't have that stability.
Okay, but time out. Do you remember, help me out, which year it was? Was it the 2000 Western Conference Finals? I was there. I'm pretty sure you were there. When Shaquille O'Neal made rag dolls out of Tim Duncan and David Robinson. Which year was it? I was there. It was just a mismatch because Shaq was indefensible. And the other okay, you talk about all the adversity Kobe went through. And again, I loved Kobe, but he caused a lot of it himself. Am I right? He did.
To some degree. Did he not? But Skip, what I'm saying is, what adversity did Tim Duncan go through? That's all I'm saying.
Because he's the leader of the team. There was none because none emanated from the leader of the franchise.
But wait a minute. What if they had changed the coach?
They didn't have to because Tim Duncan was too good. They didn't need a new coach.
Wait a minute. They had to change the coach in Chicago because Krause and those boys didn't want Phil there, and they were winning titles.
Come on.
What are you talking about? It happens.
You mean
it happens?
Detroit
went to won an NBA Finals and then went and lost Game 7 to San Antonio, and they replaced Larry Brown. Phil was in the finals against Boston and those boys, and they still wanted him going and wanted somebody new. It happens.
Okay, but
it didn't happen to Tim.
Maybe this is overstated, but didn't Kobe quote unquote run Shaq out of town? Did he not?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, there's no question about that.
Okay.
There's no question about that. With Bus wanted Dr. Bus was willing to do it, but Kobe certainly wanted that happen. That to happen at the time.
Sorry, champ. Good try.
2001 Western Conference Finals are what you're referring to when Shaq.
2001. Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Ragdolls.
Yeah, thank you.
Of Duncan. Tony Gwynn died at the age of 54 after a long battle with oral cancer. Gwynn, who was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2007, is the Padres' all-time leader in games, batting average, hits, RBI, runs, walks, and stolen bases. Stephen A., today we want to know, how will you remember Tony Gwynn?
Well, he was obviously class personified. When you talk about the game of baseball, particularly when you consider some of the travails it has had to endure over the last several years because of performance-enhancing drugs and things of that nature, he's certainly an individual that was never associated with such things. The level of integrity that he had personally and he brought to the game of baseball was clearly unquestionable. When you consider the .338 lifetime batting average, what is it, 19, I got a stat here, batted 300 in each of his last 19 seasons. That is just phenomenal. I mean, there are a bevy of statistics where the only name that you hear above his own is that of Ty Cobb. And obviously you hear people talk about his smile, his affable personality, his generosity, the decency and respect that he not only brought to the game, but to individuals who reported on the game, who surrounded the game, who were involved in the game, who represented the game. He was an ambassador personified. And so obviously anytime you see or you hear of somebody being gone, particularly at the age of 54, it reminds you of your own mortality, but especially so when you consider the kind of human being and the kind of man that he was. For somebody so great and so graceful to be gone so early, it's truly tragic, as the Commissioner Bud Selig would say. But at the same time, you know, God usually takes the good ones early. And on that level, we can be thankful for that. Understand that a person of his character is clearly in a better place. It's just that the rest of us are going to be missing something without him here any longer.
Yep, that's very well said, and I want to echo what you said. This was a good man with a great heart. I was around Tony Gwynn in many interview situations, and I'm here to tell you, and I'm not exaggerating, it didn't matter before games, 4 or 5 hours before games, whether it was a national magazine writer or the kid from the high school newspaper who managed to finagle a credential and get in the clubhouse. Tony Gwynn would sit down and give you depth and humor in whatever questions you wanted to talk to him about. I've never seen anything quite like the way this man handled the media. On the baseball level, I go back and forth between Tony Gwynn and Pete Rose as the greatest contact hitter ever. To me, it's a close call, and maybe because my heart's here right now, I almost lean toward Tony Gwynn because he was almost like a pool player of a hitter. It was like 8-ball in the side pocket, like he could almost call his shots, using every hole on both sides of the field. I'm going to go here, I'm going to go here. And I look at their numbers, Stephen A., and obviously Pete Rose played until he's 45 years of age. Tony Gwynn played until he's 41. Pete Rose wound up with just a staggering number of hits. He wound up with 1,100 more hits than Tony Gwynn. But over their last 5 years, to echo the stat that you used, last 5 years of his career, Tony Gwynn hit 343 over those 5 years. Pete Rose hit only 261 over his last 5 years. So he faded pretty badly. Tony Gwynn didn't fade at all. And then let me finish my comments by just saying, just so he didn't pass in vain, I want to remind some of our young viewers, young baseball players who do use smokeless tobacco. Tony Gwynn blamed his oral cancer on his career-long use of smokeless tobacco. We'll never know whether that was exactly the cause. You just can't know for sure, but you can guess that it was. So remember, Tony Gwynn said no, and that was a strong statement that he made, just for the record. But thank you for everything you said, Stephen A.
Well, it's definitely important that you sent that last message, because a lot of times when somebody great is gone, we're lamenting the fact that they're gone, as opposed to remembering why as well.
Yep.
And if Tony Gwynn said this has something to do with it, it would behoove the younger generation of professional baseball players chewing on that tobacco in that dugout to recognize that.
Tony Gwynn, 54 years old. Rest in peace. 20 years ago today, 95 million people watched. 95 million. They watched a now infamous 1993 white Ford Bronco be chased down the Los Angeles freeway, the 405 to be exact, by more than 24 police cars and more than a half a dozen helicopters above, capturing it all. Al Collins was at the driver's seat, and in the back seat was O.J. Simpson, who had officially become a fugitive. Stephen A., take us back to that day 20 years ago. What do you remember?
What I remembered is that I was ticked off by the cameras being fixated on some white Bronco instead of showing my Knicks game in the NBA Finals of Game 5. That's what I was ticked off. You know, it was too many distractions, too much interruption, and I was like, I can't see nothing, I can't see anything. All I'm hearing is voices and all of this other stuff. And I was, you know, I barely remembered some of it because I was so frustrated by it at that particular time. Until my family reminded me we were, you know, in the house in Queens, in Hollis, Queens, and you know, obviously we were anticipating that O.J. Simpson was going to kill himself, to be quite honest with you, because that's how it sounded. I mean, everybody was worried about that, and so, you know, you were riveted to some degree, but if you were a basketball fan, you were also frustrated because, I mean, they kept showing it on the screen, and even the announcers were distracted, for crying out loud. And knowing so many of my contemporaries in this business that were at Madison Square Garden that night, they were all talking about how they weren't watching the game. Everybody was standing by the television sets in the media room. Folks in the stands were leaving their seats and going, you know, to the concession areas where the TVs were, because the TVs were fixated on the Bronco chase and all of that other stuff. But you actually thought you were going to hear that one of the most renowned and famous professional athletes in history was going to kill himself rather than turn himself in and be arrested for double murder. That's what came to my mind.
So I'm with you. That was the first and last time during an NBA Finals game that I quit watching the NBA Finals game and I wanted to watch CNN. Couldn't take my eyes off this. Quick story, my background with O.J., when I was at the LA Times back in the late 70s, I was assigned to do a story on O.J. the actor, and I spent several days with him on a movie set in Burbank, California. He was filming a TV movie called, chillingly, A Killing Affair was the name of the TV movie. His co-star was Elizabeth Montgomery. I don't know if you remember Bewitched. And she looked a little like Nicole. Like Nicole. Sure. And they were detective partners. Little what? Yeah.
I'm saying she looked really good, is what I'm trying to say.
So
I remember Bewitched.
Yes. I got to interview her for this story. Right. That was a highlight of my career.
She wasn't Zsa Zsa Gabor, but she worked.
Yeah, I'm with you. So I then got to know O.J. a little better and better in the football context as I interviewed him over the years. And as I got to know him, he had a little rage underneath. He had a little, he was quick to get very emotional about things that happened in the football context. But I hope the younger viewers can understand what O.J. was once upon a time. He was the most charismatic, dynamic figure in all of sports. He was a commercial-making machine with a smile the size of the Hollywood sign. And for me to sit back on that night, June 1994, and watch him in the back seat of that Bronco, first of all, to me, it was one long, surreal, to me, admission of guilt. It looked like. And I'm with Stephen A. I'm sure everybody thought
he was going to kill himself.
Because they said he had a gun in the back seat, and I thought, this is the end of this guy.
Right, the way they told the story.
And I watched the whole. Who didn't watch? Once you started, who stopped? Well, nobody stopped.
Stephen A., you said earlier in our meeting, no one can turn away from a wreck. It was a wreck. Like, you could not. You were fixated on what the possibility was of it happening. Was he going to kill himself?
You were as frustrated as I was because I didn't want anything interfering with the game. You did get the sense that he was going to take his own life. You did get that sense because the evidence had been mounting, and the LAPD and everybody involved, they had made sure to know O.J. is the prime suspect, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
And and from that moment forward, I believe that was really, really the first time that everybody said, oh, damn, he must have done this.
Right.
Because up until then, you were looking at it and saying, well, the evidence, we don't know. Oh, this is bad. This is tragic. It's looking bad. But when he was in that car and Al Cowlings was telling him, stay back, leave us alone. You know, I'm trying to tell you, I'm trying to save him. When you heard all of that and you saw them get on the phone with the dispatchers and the dispatchers trying to talk OJ down, you said, wow. He must have really done this. That's exactly what entered your mind. That was, to me, that was the first time real concrete guilt was attached to him.
Yeah, and that was the introduction of what we know as a car chase with the helicopter car chase. It started from that moment on. Helicopters, especially in Los Angeles, because we could not take our eyes off of it.
You were in college then.
I was just a little, maybe high school. Thank you. Don't be telling my age. Before yesterday's win over Ghana, U.S. men's national soccer coach Jurgen Klinsmann has been in the hot seat over having to answer questions about why he left Landon Donovan off the World Cup team. Well, to explain his decision, he recently used Kobe Bryant's new Laker contract as an example. Take a look. He says, this always happens in America. Kobe Bryant, for example. Why does he get a 2-year contract extension for $50 million? Because of what he's going to do in the next 2 years for the Lakers? Of course not. Of course not. He gets it because of what he has done before. It makes no sense. Why do you pay for what has already happened? Well, Kobe Bryant, a huge soccer fan, happens to be in Brazil for the World Cup, and this is what he had to say about Klinsmann's comments.
What was your reaction to that?
I thought it was pretty funny. I thought it was pretty comical, actually. I see his perspective. I think the one perspective that he's missing from an ownership point of view is that you want to be an ownership group that's rewarding its players for what they've done while balancing the team going forward. So if you're another player in the future and you're looking at the Lakers organization, you want to be a part of an organization that takes care of its players while at the same time planning for the future. And I think that's something that, Jurgen is, he's a coach, he's a manager, he's not a GM or owner of a franchise. And so when you're looking at it from that perspective, this changes a little bit. Right. But he probably could have used another player as an example.
Yeah, Jurgen. Kobe always with the right answer. Perspective, he says, Stephen A. Do you like his response?
Well, first of all, Kobe doesn't always have the right answer. Let's be clear about that.
Well, we always know that, but I still love him.
But in this particular, you know I love him. Mm-hmm. But in this particular instance, he's right on the money.
Okay.
He's right on the money. The man used the wrong player for this example. Because let me tell you something right now. You don't count out Kobe Bryant. Not the way he plays. A matter of fact, when you look at Dwayne Wade, some would argue one of the things that's being held against him, why he's going to be critiqued on a heavier level, is because the comparison is going to be drawn to Kobe. Yes, you were flash and you could get to the hole at will and you could elevate yourself and play above the rim and do mercurial things. But at the same time, when that is going to desert you because Father Time comes knocking or attrition kicks in, there are other requisite skills that need to be developed so you can continue the level of greatness that we're accustomed to seeing you display. And when it comes to Kobe Bryant, this was a dude that could elevate. He was an incredible athlete. He could do all of these different things playing above the rim. But when the legs weren't what they used to be, somehow, some way, he made sure to maintain enough of it to some degree, while at the same time developing one of the best jump shots in this game. Not to mention the sensational footwork that he has to go along with it. So when you look at that and you say the Lakers giving him $48.5 million over 2 years, I'm sorry, you're not just giving it to him because of what he's done. You're giving it to him because of what he can do. And where the coach really dropped the ball for USA is that he didn't take into account the fact that a Kobe Bryant is a talent that pays for himself because he packs the house and he brings people through the turnstiles. And because he's going to do that along with paraphernalia sales and etc., he is going to pay for himself. That's why he deserves the money that he's getting, because what it's going to cost the Lakers is not what it will cost the Lakers if they gave it to somebody else. Because the Lakers have a 20-year, $3 billion television deal locally, in part because of Kobe Bryant, along with the other business ventures that they have working in their favor. It's because of the greatness that this man has put on display for the better part of 2 decades now. he's earned every penny. The past, the present, and for the 2 years remaining.
But the Lakers do still have a salary cap, am I right?
Yes.
A soft one, but a cap nonetheless.
That's right,
So,
a soft one.
I'm going to reiterate what I said about Dwayne Wade and Pat Riley as we open this show. There's certain people I don't bet against. One of those two guys, and Kobe Bryant. I don't bet against Kobe. But it is now on Kobe's shoulders to prove Jurgen Klinsmann wrong. Because he can. Even though he'll be 36 in August. He's coming off Achilles rupture, fractured knee. Are we sure that Kobe can live up to, next year, $23.5 million, the following year, $25 million? Are you sure, Stephen A., he can live up to it? I'm not completely sure, but again, I'm not going to bet against it. He still has the capability to prove Jurgen wrong. We will see if he can live up to that. Do you think there was some thinking on the part of the Laker management that they just paid him because he is box office and they needed him to be the marquee player through a rebuilding couple of years? Maybe there's some thought there. Maybe a little.
That might have factored into the equation, but I think Kobe's, the most salient point he made, Skip, was that you want to be known as an organization that takes care of people who take care of you. If everything is about what have you done for me lately, and no faith is placed in what you can do for me moving forward, then that doesn't make you an attractive destination for a potential marquee talent. When you have a history of taking care of your own, it goes a long way. That's why you see organizations do that, because it's easier for them to attract individuals to their franchise in the future because they have that reputation. So when they go to somebody and they say, we will take care of you, we will do right by you, it matters.
Okay.
And it goes a long way
On
towards
balance.
getting people to come play for you.
On balance, allow me to throw out 3 salaries from the newly crowned San Antonio Spurs. World champions, baby. That sounds good.
Yeah,
I like that. I
okay,
like
go
the
ahead.
ring of that, so
Throw
to
it
speak.
out.
Right.
Last year, Tony Parker made $12.5 million. Tim Duncan made $10.4 million. And Manu Ginobili, made $7.5 million.
Right.
Again, Kobe is scheduled to make 23 and then 25.
Yes.
Think about that. Think about it.
Yeah, I don't have to. Because the operative word there is San Antonio as opposed to L.A. I remember years ago when some of these small market teams, Skip, I did my research on it, some of these small market teams was making $5, $7 to $10 million on their local television deals for the NBA season.
There's a cap.
Time out. Hold on, Skip. The Lakers signed on for $150 million annually.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to say to you is that, again, it's not a hard cap. It's a soft cap. There are punitive damages with the luxury tax, etc. But if a market like L.A. is bringing in that money, then you can't go to a Tim Duncan or a Tony Parker or a Manu Ginobili and get them to accept those dollars because they know you're making it over here. But when you're in Texas, a state with no state income tax, by the way, and you're in a smaller market, and you see everybody around you having to deal with that, you're making a quality of life decision. But if they were in L.A., there's no way that Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili would accept those dollars from an L.A. or New York or Chicago market. Not from one of those markets. No.
They took dramatically less money because they wanted to win championships. Tim Duncan,
they took
$10 million a year.
less
You
money
kidding me?
because they were in San Antonio, and San Antonio can't afford it, so they had to make the decision: do we stay here, all right, and accept less, or do we leave and go elsewhere? They made the decision to stay. But if they were in L.A., Chicago, or New York, there is no way those markets would have come to Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili and got them to accept those dollars. You would have had to pay them more because they would have watched you collect it. Skip, they would have watched you collecting the money. What's the Dwayne Wade and LeBron James complaining about now?
Okay,
what they're saying is, we don't mind, hold on, we don't mind taking a pay cut, but Mickey Arison, you can't ask us to take the pay cut and pocket it yourself. You have to use it to get us other players.
Okay.
You can't ask us to take a pay cut while you collecting all of this dough.
Seriously, If you want to pay Tim Duncan for what he has done for a franchise, shouldn't he be worth $25 million next year?
I just said he is. But I'm saying to you, if you're working in a smaller market, you have to make a decision. If we're working in the newspaper business, Skip, I'm working for the Winston-Salem Journal. You can pay me X amount of dollars. That ain't flying if I'm working in New York City. You better come up with that.
Well,
you better come up with that money. I'm in that market.
You would be carrying the Winston-Salem Journal or whatever it is. You'd be the star of it. You'd be worth $25 million. You'd be the only reason anybody bought the paper.
But they wouldn't be able to afford to pay me what the New York papers could pay me. That's the point. The market matters.
Well, it's not that big a disparity from Winston-Salem to L.A.
Hey, excuse me. If I was working at some rinky-dink smaller network, all right, there's a certain amount of money that I'm going to get.
Pay the man.
ESPN can't come to me with that. Oh, ESPN making money,
Gentlemen,
which means I need to make money.
We got to wrap this
Spurs
discussion.
are making a lot of money.
So it seems to me you make $10 million and he makes $10 million, correct?
Who?
You both $10 million, $10 million.
How does that? No, he makes $25 million.
Oh, he makes $25 million and you make $10 million. Okay, so you're the Tim, he's the Kobe.
I take less because
get it.
This show has a cap.
It has a cap.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we asked you who had the better career, Tim Duncan or Kobe Bryant. The results are in. This is from the Twitter world. 53% say Tim Duncan.
Oh, you're kidding.
That's how I feel.
People have wised up.
It looks like they agree with Skip Bayless. Let me get this right, folks. You at home all agree with one Bayless. Interesting. How do you feel about that?
I'm dumbfounded. Stephen A., what's wrong with you? You picked the wrong team in the finals, and then you picked the wrong side of this debate.
If you're going by consistency in terms of record, there is no arguing that. There's no arguing that. But Kobe's had more adversity he's overcome.
All right, we leave it there. Briefly, you guys know there was a 10% increase in the NBA Finals ratings this year. Why do you think that is? Stephen A., you quickly.
Because everybody was looking forward to the rematch. And they got what they wanted, and then they wanted to see the car crash because they saw Miami falling before their very eyes.
I think you're underestimating the drawing power of my San Antonio Spurs, who have become the world's team because so many Americans with foreign roots are now falling in love with the Spurs.
Is that's what's happening?
They are the world's team. Yep.
For Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith, I'm Carrie Champion. We are the world's show. We'll see you tomorrow, 10 a.m.
We
Eastern
are the
on
children.
ESPN2.
We are the ones who make a brighter day.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can catch First Take Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific on ESPN2.
Someday, people will say, I knew Ty, Ryan, Chase, Dylan, when he was kart racing in 38th place. Someday, people will say, he's on a roll, on fire. Someday, people will shake their heads and say, man, that kid sure did grow up fast. Names are made here. The Gardner Denver 200 at Road America. Saturday at 2:30 Eastern on ABC. Fired up by Johnsonville. Someday, people will say, I knew Ty, Ryan, Chase, Dylan, when he was kart racing in 38th place. Someday, people will say, he's on a roll, on fire. Someday, people will shake their heads and say, man, that kid sure did grow up fast. Names are made here. The Gardner Denver 200 at Road America. Saturday at 2:30 Eastern on ABC. Fired up by Johnsonville.